Hi y'all! I am going to be making a super adorable, scrappy mohair bow embellished wall hanging. Spoiler alert, I have to make this dress before to generate scraps to be able to make the scrappy wall hanging. I kind of reset on scraps when I moved to Oslo, and I actually don't have that many scraps to work with, at least not in the palette I'm looking for. And this is gonna go in my bedroom, and the sort of vibe of my bedroom is bright, airy, cottagecore kind of thing with like cutesy accents, or that's what I want it to be. Let's hop to it.
The scarf is my inspiration for this project, so I'm choosing a color palette that's inspired by it, and I'm going to start with a little sketch. For the dress, I've been really inspired by these La Réunion dresses ever since I saw them at the Met last year, and so I'm going for something that uses that style of sort of patchwork for a tiered skirt. So it's these large panels that are patched together, and I want something that has a ton of tiers, a ton of volume, and puff sleeves. So I'm going to be using the Zero Waist Tier Dress by Birgit Helmersen as my starting pattern, but I'll be making a lot of modifications to get the fit and the look that I'm going for. I did a little mini desk makeover over the weekend, so it's so cute. For my panels, I am kind of winging it with the width of these because I'm not sure what to do, but based on images that I saw online and videos from other folks who have made this pattern, I think because I'm kind of busty and got a butt, I think I need more sort of volume or width in my top tier. So what I'm doing is I have 5 fabrics. I made a cut that was about 1/3 of the way, and about 1/3 of each panel is getting sewn together to the top tier. The remaining 2/3 will get sewn into the second tier, and then I'll use a full width panel of all 5 fabrics for the third tier. This is going to be a super gathered and ruffly dress, but I think it's going to suit me. I'm really excited to experiment with this because I've never made anything that is quite this gathered. I removed all the salvages that I could, and so I'm only having to serge where there were raw edges. And of course I'm using my signature mismatched serging threads.
Alright, so I've got this lovely layer all serged, ironed, top stitched. Wow, who am I? I need to decide which sleeve is going to go on which side. Oh, here's my sleeves. And I feel like, yeah. So I want it to go like this, and then I'm just gonna figure out how this is gonna go based on that.
I'd really like to sew right now, Albie. Like to sew.
I'm finally making progress on this dress. It's taken days longer than I hoped, expected, let's say, and that's because when I read through the instructions the first time, the instructions for setting in the sleeve and this whole area was just like, I did not think it was a good method. It seems kind of like this pattern was designed for the sleeveless version, and then, I'm not trying to be offensive, but the designer then was like, oh, I could do a sleeve version and it would appeal to more people and that'd be great, and then they just like tacked on the sleeves. I ended up finding actually a really nice way to construct it, but it took me days to conceive of it, implement it, all that. I'm really proud of this. It's just sleeves, but it's about to become a dress, and then we can get to the actual purpose of this video, which is the wall hanging. But look how good that looks. If anyone wants to know how I did this, I'd be happy to detail it like in a DM or a message or something. Yeah, this took like a lot of thought on my part. Day like 1 million of working on this dress, and I just wanted to show you my final tier of ruffles is like almost 4 times my height. So this is it 4 times, and that's really wild. I've never sewn this many gathers to anything, but I really like it. Like, I think this is kind of the secret to making the dress work for me, is making it like really gathered and really roughly, because it's looking really good overall, my like curves and everything. So I'm gonna sew this and I'll be done with the dress.
Now for the wall hanging. My first ever quilt was a simple square patchwork just like this, and I've been so inspired seeing DIY Daisy do such fun things with this sort of style that I really wanted to make a wall hanging. And so here I am just sketching it out, playing with my colors. I'll have a decision later to make about the bows, but I love this. I think it's gonna be so good. My quilting ruler and rotary cutter and the scraps from the dress to create 4.5-inch squares, but you can make these whatever size you'd like. It's really up to you.
These squares took less than an hour to cut out, which is amazing. So now I'm just gonna lay it out here and figure out how I want them to be.
I'm trying to lay these out so that the colors are evenly distributed. And here's my method for staying organized when you're sewing. I make a post-it and I write what row number I'm on, and then I pick up the squares so that each subsequent square goes under the one before it. So 1 and then 2 goes under, 3 goes under that, 4 goes under that, and then I end up with these nice little stacks. I'm using a foot that has a guard where a 1/4 inch will land to make it easy to sew, but you can use whatever you have. And now I'm going to sew. To do this, I take my first square and I place my second one on top of it and I sew. And then I place my third one on top of my second one and I sew. And this just helps me keep it organized. So I'm always adding the new square on top of the old one and sewing. And I do this really quickly. I don't even backstitch at this stage because we'll be sewing over these seams and it'll get locked in really well later. At the end of the row, I take my original post-it and I place it back on the first square. And I use a pen here just to keep it in place in case things get moved around or whatever so that the post-it doesn't fall off. Here's how I iron. I iron the seams of each row opposite to the ones next to it. So let's say the first one goes to the left, second one goes to the right, then the left, right, you get the idea. And I like to stack them up so that the last row is above the one before it so that I can just really easily see which way I'm supposed to be ironing the next row. And this keeps it nice and organized. I do this because it creates a really flat seam and it also makes it really easy to line up when we're sewing these rows together. So here you can see I'm sort of nestling the seam allowances and you'll really be able to feel like a tight fit. And I put a pin into each seam allowance so that they lay really flat. And as I'm going, I take my time so that I can just make sure that I'm sewing everything flat, everything in place, removing my pins as I go, more or less. You may have noticed that I don't use a lot of pins in my sewing, but I do here because I really want things to be lined up when it comes to these squares, and I really want my seam allowances to be sewn down in the correct direction so that things lie flat later.
Hobie, are you reading? What are you reading, girly? What are you reading? She's reading Kant. Now I just have to iron it and we'll be almost done.
After officially deciding which way will be the top, I iron all of my remaining seams down so that they are going in the direction of gravity, and this will just help things lay really flat. Iron the other side just to finish things off. For the backing, you'll need a piece of fabric that is the same exact size as your front. I didn't have something like that, so I'm just going to piece together a few scraps for my backing.
So I'm getting really close and I just need to cut some hangers, sew them, turn them inside out.
In my tabs, I made mine 8 inches by 4.5 inches wide, which will give me a 2-inch tab, but you can do whatever you'd like. Time for a snack break.
Now I'm just gonna sew these together long ways, 1/4 inch seam allowance. And then a super nice thing about making them so wide is that you don't even need to like struggle to turn this inside out. You can just kind of like do it. No safety pins required, no extra bits. You can kind of just do it. We're gonna pin it all together and I'm gonna sew it kind of leaving a gap at the bottom that I'll hand sew later. So I'll kind of sew, and these little tabby dudes seams at the back. Nice. Are gonna get folded like this and kind of sewn in, and then they'll flip out when we flip it right ways. The only thing I have to hang it is this like stick from the backyard, and yeah, it's gonna work. It's gonna work. It's gonna work because that's all I have. I can't find like a dowel in Norway. They don't have Home Depot here. They aren't about that. No, I mean they are. They have other things, but I can't find like a big wooden dowel like you can find really easily in the States. I feel like I'm gonna center it every other because I have 7 across. So I'm gonna do 1, 2, 3, 4. But remember when you're centering that you've still got seam allowance here that's gonna get sewn up.
I'm stitching my tabs in place to the front of my top, just inside the seam allowance.
Now I have set myself up really beautifully to just pen my back piece all the way around and then sew with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and we'll turn it right side out and continue. Oh, do you love it? Do you love it? Do you want to wear it? Oh, she wants to wear it. Yeah. I love you. Oh, it's so hard to get work done. It's so hard. It's so hard when you've got a baby. Oh, she's gone. I am going to clip my corners and just do like a little kind of like that, and then just angle it, and that'll help us get a sharper corner.
I turn everything right side out and pop out the corners really well. Now it's time to make the I-cord. I'm using my little I-cord maker and using a mohair for this. I've detailed how to do this in a previous video, so you can check that out if you'd like. But you can really use whatever you'd like. I think ribbons or just plain yarn would be really cute here. And I'm also going to stitch up my quilt with a ladder stitch. This is a super invisible stitch and really quick for me, but you can do it however you'd like. If you're in a pinch, you could even top stitch this just with your machine. It's totally up to you. Now I'm going to pre-tie my bows so that I can get them all nice and neat before I tack them down, and lay them out so that my colors are evenly distributed. To sew these down, I go in from the back, around, and then back from the front to the back, and I tie a really quick little knot just to get this started, and then I loop around a few more times just to secure the bow in place, tie a knot, and then I hide my ends inside of the quilt. Here's my sad bedroom before. You can see that the walls are super empty and there's really not much going on. And here it is after. I've hung my inspiration scarf along with my new wall hanging, and I just think it looks so charming and lovely. I've been giving myself some grace. I've really wanted to do like a full bedroom makeover and dive into decorating, but I just haven't had the energy. So I'm realizing that making small changes is more my speed, and that's okay. You don't have to do everything all at once. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you make projects inspired by either of these, feel free to tag me on Instagram at NeonFuzzStudio. If you have any questions or comments, I'd love to hear from you. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.